It's like graphics card mania around here. All right, we saw our FE review yesterday. Now we're gonna talk about the first AIB in the lineup here. There's like 1.3 million views on this video showing the size of this guy right here. By the way, the memes just keep rolling in with people using my image, and they're pretty freaking funny, so keep them coming. Anyway, we're gonna take a look today at the ASUS ROG Strix 4090. Let me put it down before I pull my back.
Hey, Jay. Jay. Jay.
What?
We got work to do.
Yeah, I'm playing World of Warships. Yeah. World of Warships is the free-to-play naval strategy game where you command the most iconic and famous warships from World War I and World War II, recreated with stunning detail and accuracy. Build your fleet while participating in various game types while upgrading your ship's arsenal along the way. New players who sign up using my link below will receive an exclusive starter pack to get you up and running quickly by receiving 7 days premium time, 1 million credits, 300 doubloons, and the Tier 5 premium ship, the Exeter. So what are you guys waiting for? Start sinking ships with World of Warships by heading to the description below and getting your freebies.
I mean, if you haven't seen the video already, there's the size difference compared to a 4090 FE, over 14 inches long. Yeah, it's really gonna limit the cases it'll fit in both length and height, because as you can see, it is higher, like taller than a 4090 FE as well. I'm not gonna go into too much detail. It's really the same card as a 4090 in terms of specs and all that. It's just AIBs really seem to be leaning into the 600 watt not limitation, but spec for power cable anyway, ATX 3.0 PCIe Gen 5 cable. I mean, this much of the card, that's all hollow, that's flow through. That's just flow through cooling, which is good. But remember, the PCB only goes right to here. This is where the PCB stops. So if you were gonna be water cooling this card, it's a pretty standard size. It's just they really, really leaned into the, look at this. Look at that, that's insane. Like in terms of density of cooler. I can tell you right now, this card is not pulling 600 watts. It does have a slightly higher boost bin than the FE. So anyway, we'll just get to the charts. We'll compare it to the same cards we compared it to before, which is gonna be the 3090 Ti for the Win 3, the 3090 Strix, which is basically just the previous gen of this, which is this white one here, it looks way smaller. The 6950 XT Red Devil, which is one of the fastest 6950 XTs on the market, and then the 4090 FE. So let's see whether or not spending extra on a big giant, which really just looks like a gun at this point, you know? Okay, so compared to the charts, it is faster than the 39 or the 4090 FE pretty much across the board. That's not, one might look at that and say, well, because there's better cooling, so the temps stay cooler. Actually, it's not. They both ran about the same temperature. This was averaging 60, 61, and then the FE was 62, is the hottest for us. So it really depends on the titles. I mean, it's completely silent. You can't hear it at all, which makes sense because the fans are so low. Remember, I run these tests at stock fan curve. I test, if you take it out of the box and put it in the system and just turn it on and start gaming, what do you experience? Well, you experience pure silence with this. A slight amount of coil whine versus the FE. In fact, it wasn't even enough to try and record, but I did notice it. There was a slight amount of coil whine, not like the 6950 XT, this thing was a coil whining beast. But if you take a look at the performance, the average clock speed I was getting on the FE 4090 was 2740. This one here, the max I saw it go to was 2820, and then it sat mostly around 2805. So we're talking about 65 megahertz difference. Not a lot, but it was enough to keep the clocks higher on average, a few bins versus the FE, which gave us a pretty big gap in synthetic benchmarks like Port Royal and TimeSpy. But the bigger gaps in those tests don't always translate to huge gaps in gaming because those synthetics, those overclocking synthetics that are designed for like Hall of Fame overclocking and bragging rights, they definitely take advantage. So a few boost bins higher would get you a pretty significant score increase. They're designed to do that, to really just widen the gap between the cards. But in terms of actual gaming performance, not really, there's a bent fin here that's bugging me, I'll fix it later. It's really a couple of FPS higher in like 4K. Now, a couple of FPS in 4K, especially with ray tracing title, is a pretty significant amount of horsepower difference. 1440 and 1080p, just like the FE, depending on the title, it's bottlenecked. It's bottlenecked. It's funny though, because some of the titles, if you look at them, the bottleneck's slightly higher on this card versus that. Now that's just gonna have a lot to do with variance. We run the same system on all these cards. It's not like we have a system running this card and a system running this card. It's the same memory, same motherboard, same CPU, it's the same rig. That way we can alleviate any sort of variance between systems when it comes to OS overhead or any software running. It's exactly the same, a very specific kind of an order of operations I go through to make sure the OS is in the exact same state for every single card. Important to remember though, we are on pre-release BIOS, or not BIOS, but drivers. So I never see anything negative, like I never see anything go down or become impacted in a negative way going from actual game ready drivers versus press release drivers. It's just worth noting, we are on press release drivers. That's not the same driver you're gonna get with the card, so I always have to point that out. But is it worth it? This card's MSRP right now at Micro Center with a pre-listing is $1,999, putting it at the exact same price a 3090 Ti was when it launched. Nearly twice the price of what you can get a 3090 Ti for today. However, in some tests, you are getting just about twice the performance. The 3090 and the 3090 Ti was one of those cards that just made us go, oh my God, it's so expensive, but the performance. That's what this does to that. It really makes that card feel like 2 generations old because of the performance uplift we're seeing from generation to generation right now. So I haven't even compared these cards to 3080 yet because our regression testing means I have to go back and test every single card again. This is coming up very soon because we will be testing it against obviously the 4080s. So I need to start this testing. But if you compare it to the 3080, it is more than 2x performance. The RT cores, the 3rd gen RT cores in the 4090 just make short work of any sort of RT title. It's only taken 3 generations of graphics card with RT cores to finally get to the point where turning on RT, although a performance hit, no matter what, no longer a performance hit that makes you just, well, except for Cyberpunk. Even Cyberpunk, this thing was still at like, I don't remember exactly what the FPS was, but it was under 60. But the question is it worth $400 more to you over the FE? Especially when the FE 3090 cooling was okay, wasn't great, but it wasn't terrible. This card's cooling was not really that much, if any better. I mean, the ambient temperature in this room is extremely constant. It's 72 degrees Fahrenheit, nonstop, never changes in this room. I built the AC and the HVAC in this room for that very reason. But $400 difference over an FE. Well, if I were to make this choice personally, I'd probably choose the FE, even though I still have concerns about the power cable coming out, which I mentioned in that video. Fun fact, it is recessed on this card, but where it's recessed is still overall closer to the side panel than the FE. So my concerns about the FE are even more exacerbated on this card. And I was running this in the Helios case. I've never seen a Helios case seem so small. Although this fits it with no problem, there's still a pretty significant bend on there. So when power supply manufacturers start providing cables with their power supplies, you get a cable mod cable or whatever, you'll notice that they're not putting that thick, or right here, they're not putting this thick wrap on here. It's actually able to make a little bit tighter bend. In fact, Cable Mod, they're not even sponsoring this video, but I wanna let you know, Cable Mod is actually sending and designed and is ready a 90-degree 12-volt connector. So it's a 90-degree plug designed to just come out and go straight down. So you don't have to worry about that bend. I would highly recommend one of those cables if you're concerned, like I am, about putting too much torque on this plug and potentially damaging the solder point or something where it hits the PCB. I guess the question would be for ASUS, why they chose to over-spec and just build such a big cooler when it's still the same 450 watts that the FE is. Although I do think one of the ways they're able to keep that higher boost pin is they have a slightly different voltage curve and a boost curve. Spoiler alert, I'll talk about it in our overclocking video where I show you this is one of the first times that like overclocking in these cards is somewhat limited because we are not power limited by these cards. Moving the power slider is the first time in history that I've been doing this in 10 years that it gets you 0 performance uplift. 0. It's because if you look at the reason why in GPU-Z as to why you're not getting any more clock speed, it's because you are 100% voltage limited. And voltage is locked on these cards as of the time of making this video. But we'll talk about that in the overclocking video because you said, Jay, you said you hit 3000 megahertz. Yes, there's still a way to do that. It's not by just cranking power limit, which also means I was able to hit 3000 megahertz without really impacting cooling too much. So anyway, there you go guys, that's the ROG Strix. Well, we have some other models that are on their way in, which we'll be taking a look at. I would love to get my hands on that Aorus card because I just wanna see the size comparison to this right here. I kinda wanna make an externally mounted GPU case mod now. Just why not, right? But it might be, you might actually see now through PCIe, Gen 3 risers or a Gen 3 motherboard, you might start seeing some actual performance impact by not having PCIe Gen 4.0 or 4.0, because these are 5.0 cards. So keep that in mind. You're gonna start seeing some performance degradation through older systems, not just through CPU bottlenecking, both at 1440, 1080p is a joke, now through your PCI Express bandwidth. All right guys, thanks for watching. Sound off down below if this card's willing to get your money at $2 grand. Available, hopefully, not scalped, or are you gonna wait for RDNA 3.0 and see what they have to bring to the fight? Thanks for watching guys. As always, we'll see you in the next one.